luck or serendipity isn't cosmic woo fairy dust that's been sprinkled upon some of us and not upon others.
Are some people luckier than others?
So it turned my entire life from the plan that I had to this left turn that has impacted everything from there on out.
Or are they just better at capitalizing on unexpected opportunities?
If you die with the most money, you don't win. You don't get a medal. There's no award ceremony. Like, you're just dead. So what are you going to do with the story that is your life and the time that you have?
Perspective is everything.
Hey there, friends. This is Dennis Geelen, author of the Happy Accidents newsletter and the book, The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into true stories of wildly successful people, products, or businesses, all of which can trace their success back to a chance encounter, a serendipitous event, or a fluke invention. In each episode, we unravel the tales of unexpected triumphs and the remarkable journeys that led to their incredible success. I'm on a mission to explore the fascinating world of happy accidents, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. So, why should you tune in? Well, besides the entertainment value of these incredible stories, there's a hidden treasure trove of lessons that we can learn from them. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative mind, or simply someone who enjoys a good narrative, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiring stories and valuable insights. Get ready for a roller coaster ride of surprises, a dash of luck, and a sprinkle of wisdom. This is the Happy Accidents Podcast, where success meets serendipity. Let's jump into today's adventure.
My guest on the Happy Accidents podcast today is probably best described as a cross between Harry Potter and Bear Grylls. You can imagine that. He has spent time as a builder, a property developer, an entrepreneur, a public speaker, and a trail runner. That's quite a mix. Over the last decade, he has built a considerable resume of mountain climbing and adventure racing, covering high altitude mountains on all 7 continents. This guy has done grueling ultra marathons all over the planet, from Antarctica to the Arctic Circle. He blends decades of extreme adventure and a successful business career with both a scientific and philosophical approach to optimizing performance. Paul Watkins, welcome to the Happy Accidents podcast.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for having me here. It's funny, I listened to that intro and I often listen to that and go, that can't be me. That guy sounds really interesting, and I'm not that interesting. So who is this guy? I don't equate the two.
Yeah. It's funny when you get an outside perspective of your own life and you're like, wow, I've done that, haven't I? And yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited to dive in today because you've got a ton of these fun things that we can dive into. I'm hoping we have enough time on the podcast
yep.
to get through a bunch of them, but I know
I'm here for
you've got some happy accident stories about a mix up with exam scores, about a chance meeting at work. I want to dive into those
it. Yeah,
with you,
absolutely.
but yeah, I want to start off with this quote that you sent me. Again, it's about your life, and it's just going to kind of tee up for people you, your journey, and your mindset, and then we're going to dive into those things. So here's the quote.
What did I say?
You said, and again, it's going to be one of those things where you're stepping back and, wow, yeah, that's me. So you wrote, in 1995, I left university with $8 in my bank account, driving a sky blue Holden Gemini with beige upholstery. That tells you something right there. It's painting a picture. A little over a decade later, I found myself hitching a ride on a reconditioned Russian military Aleutian cargo plane out of Argentina on my way to the heart of the Antarctica. I was an unemployed, self-confessed nerd suffering from a serious case of imposter syndrome as I embarked on an unsupported polar expedition to climb the highest peak on the Antarctic continent. It's times like this you think, how the hell did I end up here? So
Every
we're
every word of that is true, by the way.
so this I want to unpack this. Like I want to unpack your story and how did you end up in these crazy situations? So why don't we rewind the clock a little bit?
Sure.
Take us back to, previous to this 1995 leaving university. What was your original hopes and dreams and aspirations coming out of high school? Where did you think your life was going to go?
When I was really young, I wanted to be an architect. When like primary school, I always loved that kind of cleanliness. And then I got a bit older and I discovered Indiana Jones and I decided that I definitely wanted to be an archaeologist. Like that was definitely it until my career advisor explained that like Raiders of the Lost Ark wasn't really an accurate depiction of what the career would look like. But I spent all of high school completely convinced that I would be a doctor. Like that was going to be my career. Maths and chemistry and biology, I enjoyed them. I understood them. Like it made sense to me. So in my mind, in late high school, getting ready for university, that was the career path. There's really no doubt here. That's what the business card will say. That's what the life will look like, and all those things, et cetera, et cetera. And then I got to the end of year 12 and we sat all our exams. So the kind of the high school process in Australia have a whole bunch of exams at the end of that final year of high school, and you get an aggregate score out of 100. And to get into medicine, you needed 98. And I was on track for that completely. And then we had our English exam. Now, English was my thing. Like I'm a nerd. I read every book the school had. This was a lock. This was really good. And then I got a terrible score in the English exam and I was absolutely devastated. And I ended up getting 96 out of 100 instead of 98 across all the subjects, which meant you were 2% shy. And the weird thing was the school actually had this kind of poor showing in the English exams right across the board. People like me, students like me, were expecting it to knock it out of the park, turned in terrible marks. And the students that they thought wouldn't do well were suddenly turning in stellar performances on that one paper. And there was kind of this consternation going, has there been some kind of marking error? Has the machine thrown a switch or something? But whatever it was, that was what the result was. Like that you got that score and so be it. And you're just going to have to live with it. So the dream that I'd had for those years of becoming a doctor got immediately thrown out the window because I was 2% shy. And I got an offer to get into pharmacy, which was like my third career choice. Like, oh, if I have to do it, I'll get there. I only put it there because you have to put something, but I'll be in medicine. It'll be fine. And all of a sudden, you now have a different career. And I went on to spend several decades being a pharmacist. So it turned my entire life from the plan that I had to this left turn that has impacted everything from there on out. Just a simple thing. It was an English exam paper that we didn't get the score that I thought I would get. And that was enough just to tip the balance. Wow. And off you go. Wow. So I headed off to do pharmacy because I thought, well, you got in, so that's what you do. So off you go.
Yeah. You just, that's the new path I'm on. Head down. Let's go. Well, first of all, 98 out of 100, that's a really high bar. Like, but that's what you had to get in order to go into to be a medical doctor.
It's a very competitive degree, as I'm sure it is in the US. So from here, it's a case of going, you have to get that you have to have that benchmark high enough to kind of ensure that the intake is at the level that they want. So that was the deal. You kind of needed, in round figures, 98 to get guaranteed a spot, 97 to get an interview to maybe get a spot. And if you got 96, well, you're redundant. Off you go. We don't require your services. Thank you.
Yeah. So you go on to university. I think it was Monash University. Is that correct?
I did, yes. Well done. Yeah, so went to Monash University and did my 4-year degree, 1 year, which is an apprenticeship, so an actual, on the tools, so to speak, apprenticeship. And I drove my sky blue Holden Gemini with my beige interior. I loved that car. That was my first ever car. And unfortunately, it was written off in an accident. No one was hurt, but I was devastated when I lost that car. I love that car.
You sound more devastated about the car than you do about the test score. You were kind of like, well, that's the new path I'm on. I guess I'll be a pharmacist. But my car.
Yeah, the car, Dennis. You can't. I think as we get older, you get a little bit more philosophical about it, and you go, look, it happened, and it was what it was. And I mean, without getting too deep too early, you look back and go, if you're in a place now where you're happy, you have to accept all the things that happened along the way. So if I look at my life now and go, I'm incredibly blessed where I am and what I do and the way I live and the things I have, well, then you have to accept everything that's led you to that point. Because if you changed any one of those things, you may not be living the life you are. So I look back now and go, it all happened. So we move on. I didn't get that, and my life went in a different
Yeah.
direction. So be it.
Yeah.
And away
What
you
about
go.
at the time though? Were you quite devastated and crushed,
I
and
was
were you a
gutted,
bit?
yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
devastated because your entire life plan's been thrown off course, which is
Right.
entirely not acceptable. Like the universe has denied me what is rightfully mine, that career that
Mm.
I've been planning on. So
Right.
at the time, I was quite devastated. But
Right.
again, you keep moving forward. So
Yeah.
what have you got? Well, I've got an opportunity to do this degree, which I'm still interested in. I'm still good at. It's still a very good career. Okay, well, that's what we're doing now. So let's
Right.
do that and see where that road leads. And that's what I
Right.
did. Just, did the degree and then got into pharmacy and
Yeah.
then discovered that whilst I was an okay pharmacist, I turned out to be quite a good business person. And that kind of led me more into the retail and business ownership side of that
Right.
career more than the scientific side, which surprised me as well.
Mm. Did you end up running your own pharmacy?
Yeah, I hadn't particularly intended to do that. And this again is one of those things where something happens and a door opens that you didn't even know existed, and you walk through it and away you go. So I was working in a pharmacy, and I'd been there for a couple of years, and the owner had said to me, said, "Look, I know it's your day off tomorrow, but we've got a bunch of guys who come from a regional area." I was in Melbourne. I was working in Melbourne, so a major city. And he said, "We've got some pharmacists coming from a country area and they're doing a bit of a study tour. And, you'd find them really fascinating. If you can be bothered, come in." So it was my day off. And I thought, oh, yeah, all right, I'll come in and meet these guys. So I met them out of interest and I was chatting to them. It turns out they were not on a study tour at all. They were calling it a study tour. What they were on was a recruitment drive. So they were going around to really high level pharmacies looking for people like me, looking for people very early in their career who were very driven
Mm.
and had a mix of kind of that managerial business bent, not just we do the medicines and the pharmacy kind of thing. And we're having a chat. And the minute my boss walked out of the room, they're like, "Cool, what are your career aspirations? What do you want to do? Have you ever thought about working in the country? Have you ever thought about running a business?" And I'm fairly certain that my boss may have had a very strong inkling that this was going to occur. I don't think it was, it looked like a happy accident at the time, but perhaps he knew that these guys were out kind of headhunting to a degree, and he felt that that would be a
Right.
good move for me. So they said, "Look, come out, spend a day or two with us. We'll travel around the countryside. We'll show you what we do and see if you're interested." So we did that, and I found it fascinating. And not long after that, much to the horror of my girlfriend at the time, I packed up my bags and moved 2 hours away from the major city into a tiny country town. So I went from a city of several million to a town of about 4,000, and began managing the pharmacy there. And that then led me down a road to eventually owning multiple pharmacies of my own, in a seaside regional
Wow.
centre. And I love that. And that ended up being a whole decade block of my life where, I went to work on a day off to meet some guys out of interest. And that ended up to me packing bags, leaving town, and then owning my own businesses in a town I'd never heard of before for the best part of a decade.
Wow. Yeah, and really, it's a series of events that led to that. If you had have scored what you thought you were going to on that English test back then, and got into the medical side of things that you were hoping for, what was your intention? What was that going to look like? Would you be a doctor in a hospital? Would you have your own practice? What were you envisioning at that time?
I don't think I had thought well enough through that process at that stage of my life. I just knew that I wanted to be a doctor because that had all the connotations and the prestige. I had the capacity and the skill and all those kind of things.
Right.
And where that would take me in terms of greater granular detail, I wasn't sure. But
Right.
that's the career
Yeah.
path that I would follow. And it's
Yeah.
interesting to look back now and consider what would have happened if you got 1 or 2% higher on that score. Your life would be unrecognizable to what it is today. I'm
Yeah.
sure I'd still be living in a major capital city, and you'd be married to someone else, you'd have different kids. Like everything would be different.
Yes.
It was just a case of that one little thing sent you off on that path, and then you
Mhm.
followed that path. Then you kind of went down and went, well, how far does that rabbit hole go? And that went quite deep for me. So it's
Yeah.
one of those things of going, I know it would look vastly different. I don't know what it would look like. And I
Yeah.
try not to
So,
spend too much time thinking about it, because it's a case of going, well, it hasn't happened, so it doesn't
yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Where are you now? And we go with that and chase
Yeah.
the opportunities that present themselves to you now in the
Mhm.
life that you have.
It's interesting because you end up finding out that, hey, I'm actually quite interested in the business side of things, and I'm actually quite
Mm,
good at it. That may never have even presented itself had you been a doctor. You could have ended up in a hospital having
mm.
nothing to do with the business side of things and never realizing you have this gift or this passion for business.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like I came from a family that had that background. Like we were, stock standard. Mum stayed home and raised the kids. Dad had a normal salaried career. It's not like there was some strong entrepreneurial bent of, generations of running your own business. It just was one of those things where you followed your nose, and went, I'm interested in that. And I seem to be relatively capable at that. And the opportunity presented itself. So let's go down that road and see where it leads. And my first business was a very small pharmacy with a staff of 5 people. And within a year, I had 3 pharmacies, and I ended up with a staff of close to 60. And it was a very, very different beast. But I thrived in that, and I loved it, and it set me up for a very long time. And it was just, let's where can we take these? Let's follow nose and see what opportunities come up, and we'll chase them. Particularly when you're at that age as well. Like I was in my kind of late 20s, early 30s. You can live on not much sleep, a Snickers bar and a couple of coffees, and you can get away with a lot. And so I did. And I worked incredibly hard for about a decade there. And I mean, it comes at a cost, but I'm happy to bear that cost, because it allowed me to do a whole bunch of things I've done
Right.
post that. So I accept it. I don't regret it. I worked incredibly hard for that period of time, and it was very good to me. So it was what it was. But you're
Hmm.
right. Again, if you don't open those doors and walk through and see what's in that room, you don't know what's out there and what you might be very good at that you simply haven't been exposed to yet. And you've got these dormant skills that are just waiting for you to
Yeah.
be in the right room at the right time for you to discover that
Yeah.
you're actually quite good at that.
Yeah. I talk quite a bit with people on the podcast around the whole, there's this constant dichotomy at play of randomness and
Mm,
chance and serendipity, but we do play a part.
mm,
You could have said, no, I don't like the fact that I'm getting my third choice here, pharmacy, and
mm,
been so disenfranchised with the medical profession and just went in a whole different direction. You could have
mm,
said to your boss, no, it's my day off. I'm not coming in for a meeting. You could have had this presented to you, but hey, have you ever thought about this? And no, I think I'll just stick with what I'm doing now. Like these were things coming at you that you weren't planned, but you still played a role in going, okay, this is a new door opening.
mm,
Let's see what's on the other side of it. Uh, there's so many people that take this viewpoint of, oh, that person just got lucky. Oh, that person had
mm.
something land in their lap. Oh, that person just had that handed to them. That's a small part of it, but they had to recognize the opportunity and then capitalize on the opportunity. They played a huge role in picking up the ball and taking it from there.
Yeah, I think that's the uncomfortable part of the discussion that no one likes to have. Like I often talk to people about the fact that luck or serendipity isn't cosmic woo fairy dust that's been sprinkled upon some of us and not upon others. It's the result of a myriad of choices. It's the thousand little decisions you made along the way that led you to
Mm,
happen to be in that place, in that time, to have that conversation. But you still have to have the mindset and the behaviors of, well, I'm going to take that opportunity and see where it leads. And it may lead nowhere, or it may lead to disaster. It may be a terrible idea. I may have moved out to the country to chase this new career, and it was terrible. And I came back with my tail between my legs. But you're not going to know until you try. So
yeah,
again, it's that case of you have to make the thousand little decisions. And then you have to have that mindset to take those opportunities as they arrive and drive them as best you can. And then you get the returns. And that's,
yeah,
as you said, I think that's the uncomfortable part that people
yeah,
don't realize. The opportunities present themselves to all of us. It's a case of going, are you prepared to take the risk, to take the
yeah,
opportunity on board and bear the cost or the benefit, whatever falls your way. But you still
Yeah.
have to have that bias for action, momentum to take it. It's
Yes.
not just gifted
Yeah,
to you.
exactly. And that goes for creating the opportunity for more chances to come your way. It's by
Mm,
taking action. It's by getting out there. Had you not even put yourself in a position to be close to that 98%, pharmacy wouldn't have even been an option for you, but you were putting in the work. You were
mm.
good at the maths and the sciences. You thought you nailed the English exam, but had you just been kind of floating your way through high school, none of those opportunities ever would have even been there for you in the first place. So it kind of
Exactly.
works on both sides of the equation, right?
Yeah, you still need to put in the effort and the work for you to get to the point where you are in the place where the opportunity presents itself. Like in most cases, when I reflect back, the opportunity didn't come to me. I had to go to it. Like people say, oh, you were in the right place at the right time. Yes, but you still had to put yourself in that place to be
Yeah.
there at the right time. Like you weren't teleported in there Star Trek style. Like you actually had to do the work to be in that place, to have
Yeah.
that opportunity present itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nuance of the discussion that gets lost when people go, well, that guy was just lucky. Well, was
Yeah.
he? Or
Yeah.
were there other factors at play that maybe we don't want to
Exactly.
talk about?
Yeah. Very, very rare that you would see a case of complete dumb luck or blind luck and a person becomes wildly successful because of that. Like there's always something else going on that they're doing to increase their luck surface area and then
Hmm,
recognizing and capitalizing on those opportunities when they do come your way. So I want to jump back into your story for a bit because this
hmm.
brings us up to about 2007 now. And in 2007, you made a major pivot. You
I made an
decided
enormous
to
pivot. Yeah.
leave. You decided to leave pharmacy. What happened there, and what spurred that decision?
I would like to tell you that it was some great master plan, and it was not in any way, shape, or form. I was
Mhm.
simply burnt out. I was completely and utterly burnt out. Like I'd run or grown and then run three large businesses for the best part of a decade. I had high levels of staff, and being a pharmacist, you're in that career where you are the linchpin because you're not. It's not like you're the CEO. You're the pharmacist, so you're the most expensive person to replace. So not only was I owning and operating, I was operating inside the business as well. Like I was an
Mm.
employee as a pharmacist. It was at a time when there were very limited numbers of pharmacists in Australia. It turned out it was easier for me to go to the UK and recruit pharmacists and bring them back to Australia than it was for me to find them in Australia. And I did that several times.
Oh wow.
Literally traveled and went, hey, you're young, you're a pharmacist, you want to have a holiday, come work for me for 6 months, travel for 6 months, and we'll get you home again. And that turned out to be an easier way to get pharmacists. But I digress.
Right.
But I had that 10 years of where I was just utterly and completely burnt out. And you reach that point and be like, is this it? Like I'm only working my way through my 30s. Do I do this for another 30 years and then pray that I'm still alive and can go do things? That doesn't seem how this should work to me.
Hmm.
And so in those last couple of years, I'd reached a point where I'm like, oh, I need to have a holiday. Like I had years where I didn't take a single day off at all, not because I was trying to be a hero. It's just there were no pharmacists around. So, I had one of my pharmacists go on maternity leave, which was brilliant for her. But I then had no one. I literally worked 365 days straight until she returned because that's what you did. Um,
Oh man.
but I'd started going a couple of little holidays and I went, oh, what am I going to do? Like, I need to get away so that work can't email me. Like, I need to turn the dial down to zero. And I went and did a very, very basic trek in Nepal, mainly because I assumed that Nepal would have terrible Wi-Fi. You can't email me here. Like, I'm unreachable and I can't reach you. So everyone will leave me alone. And I loved it. I came back feeling like an entirely different human being based on that experience. And I, well, what's next? If I did that and that felt fantastic, what would you do next? And my grandfather in World War II had fought in Rabaul in New Britain, which is just off the coast of New Guinea, which is north of Australia here. And there's a very famous track there called the Kokoda Track that was made very famous in World War II. And Australians will often trek it. And I went, I would like to go trek that. And I'd like to go back to where my grandfather fought and get an understanding of that. So I went and did that. I went,
So
that was an
hold on a
incredible
second.
experience.
Were you into any of this kind of stuff before that? Were you into fitness and racing, and or was this just a split? Hey, I think I'm going to go try that.
I should have clarified that at this point in my life, I was incredibly unfit. I had never done anything like this before in my life. And I just wanted to get out. I just wanted to do something that was diametrically opposed to what I was currently doing. And getting really muddy in a jungle trek in New Guinea was about as vastly removed from the white coat pharmacy world as you can get, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a full-fledged nerd. I was not good at any of this stuff at all. So we're talking low level, not good at it, but love the experience. And I got to the point in my career where I went, well, this can't be it. I don't want to do this for another 30 years and pray that I'm not dead from a heart attack or as I talked to a lot of year 12 students or high school students, and I explained to them, if you die with the most money, you don't win. You don't get a medal. There's no award ceremony. Like, you're just dead. So what are you going to do with the story that is your life and the time that you have? So I decided to take a left turn, and I ended up selling all my businesses and went, I'm out. That's it. I'm done. I'm going to completely do something different. What's the opposite of what I'm doing now? And my girlfriend at the time, her brother was a chippy, a builder. So I went, you know what? I'm going to spend a few years and get on the tools and learn how to build. So I sold my businesses, got into that career, and at the same time was going, what's next in that adventure kind of thing over there? I did that Kokoda track. What's next? Well, you do a really basic climb. Like, I call it a mountain, but the Nepalese call it a small hill. But I went and did this small hill in Nepal and kind of went, that was fantastic. What would you do next if you wanted to do the next thing? And just began to iterate and iterate. And suddenly got to the point where I'm going, after a few years, I'm building quite a resume, and you're just working your way up the ladder. And all of a sudden, like I said, you find yourself going, I have the means and capacity and the time and the skill to go do something ridiculous. Like, I could go to Antarctica. Like, I could climb. What's the highest peak on the Antarctic continent? I could climb that. How do I do that? Okay, well, I've got to get these skills, and those guys run an expedition, and I know them, and they're really well respected and well regarded, and it'll be safe. And next thing you know, you're on a Russian military cargo jet flying out of the bottom end of Argentina to head into the middle of Antarctica, and you kind of go, hang on, what? Sorry, what? What are we doing here? Like, you're a nerdy pharmacist. How did we get from over there to over here all of a sudden? And I've got a photo of me sitting inside, because it's a military jet. So you get on the plane, there's no seats. Like, there's just, the middle of it is all cargo strapped all the way down, these huge Aleutian 76 military jets. And there's the wooden bench seat on the side. And you get on the plane, and the pilot's like, sit down and strap in, sunshine. Let's go. We got 6 hours until we land in the Antarctic ice sheet. And you're like,
Wow.
everyone looks really calm and relaxed because they're really experienced. Like, this guy on this side summited Everest 7 times, and that bloke's going to, McMurdo for his 5th expedition to Antarctica, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Away we go. And I just did that. I just kept iterating, going, what's next? What do you do next? Can I do that? I don't know. How do I find out? Well, you just go try. And not all of them were successful. I've had mountaineering expeditions where I didn't summit at all. Like, I had to turn around and come back. So they don't always end well, but you still have the experience, and you come away with knowledge and that experience, whether it was successful or not. And I just began building that resume, and it's led me to doing some very serious.
This was a very intentional change for you. You went from being, as you would call yourself, a self-professed nerd, business owner, pharmacist, to now I'm changing careers. I'm selling the business. I'm going into something where all the pressure is not on me. I'm going to go into building, just learn some different skills, some trades, and I'm going to check out this adventure side of me. And it sounds like you really got the bug, you got the itch, and just kept going. What next?
And I did. And it's that thing of going, you have to take the opportunity and see where that road goes, because you don't know what depth of capacity you have unless you test the depth of capacity. And so for me, that was, that was, what's next? Oh, we go a little higher. We go a little bit more technical. We go a little bit more remote. We need to upskill because it's getting harder, and we're getting into really technical, difficult, large climbs. So I very rapidly was in South America, North America, Africa, the Antarctic. Like, we started to build New Zealand. We started to build up quite a resume of doing some climbs. And to begin with, they're fun, and then they get challenging. And then I found myself at the pinnacle where, okay, we're on really difficult, complex climbs where the risk of success is low and the risk of serious injury or death is actually becoming a significant non-zero factor. And that in and of itself was one of the reasons that I got to the end of that kind of chapter of my story, in that I'd reached a point where I was climbing mountains where not everyone was coming home. I had an expedition on Denali, actually, when it was 2011, when I think Denali killed more people than Everest. Like, it was a tough year, and you're sitting on. I was literally sitting at camp on a sat phone to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, going, "You're going to read some stuff on the internet. Like, some things have happened. We're okay. Everyone's okay here, but I'm just letting you know that we're fine. I'll be home in a couple of weeks." And you reach that point of going, well, how far do we push this envelope now? Because we've got all the way to the end almost. There's really nothing else to climb. How far do we want to take this? And your life has evolved in the meantime as well. Like, you end up getting married, and now, well, we're talking about having children. So these are no longer all your chips you're playing with. So you need to adjust that risk reward profile. And based on that, I got to that point and went, you know what? I've really enjoyed exploring this story, this chapter of my story. I think we can put the boots up for a while, because we've got nothing to prove. We've really built up this huge resume of these kind of things. It's okay to then pivot and go, you know what, I've ticked that box, I've filled that hole for a while. Let's see what else is around the corner. What else do we find? Give ourselves the opportunity to have a look around and see what's there. And I did exactly that.
Yeah. Lucky that you were able to have that level of self-awareness and be able to step back, because it is a very addicting thing, right? You get addicted to the adrenaline rush, and it's, well, how do I top that? How do I top that? And for a lot of people, it doesn't end well. But you were able to kind of see the writing on the wall and take that step back and say, okay, been there, done that. Now what?
I think part of that is because by that stage in my life, my identity was built on numerous things. It wasn't one thing. So I didn't have all my identity wrapped up in what my career was, or what my business card said, or what my position on the org chart was. Like, I didn't identify as, well, I'm a mountain climber, so I must keep climbing mountains, or I'm a pharmacist, so I must keep doing these things. By that stage, if people asked me what I did, already I had 3 or 4 different answers, all of which were true and all of which were very varied. So to get to a point where you could go, I need to adjust or turn the dial down or let go of that portion of my identity, wasn't a catastrophic event. You weren't like, oh, I was a CEO for so long and now I'm not, or I was this for so long and the job's gone, or what have you. And all of a sudden I'm just all at sea and I don't know who I am anymore. I could let that portion go, because I've got all these other identities that I can still lean into. And what I've done is just give myself some breathing room and a little bit of space to go, okay, well, I've got some room here. What can we put in that space? What else? What skills do I have now? What opportunities are turning up? Because I've got some capacity there to fill and add another chapter to the story, versus having just loaded it all into one identity that I dare not let go. I think that's where the trap lies for some people. It's all in one bucket. If you get a lot of buckets, it's a lot easier to let put one of them down.
Yeah. And now at this point, you see this pattern repeating itself in your life. A happy accident being a test score. Was it scored incorrectly? Not sure. Sends you down the path of pharmacy, but you decide, okay, that's the path I'm going. I'm going all in. A chance encounter with these guys on your off day says, hey, would you like to maybe be a business owner and run your own pharmacy? Another happy accident sends you down that path. You go all in, to a point where 10 years and burnout, you're like, okay, I need something else. On this trip, where you're just trying to disconnect, you just come across this Kokoda track and decide, hey, I think I'm going to try that. Wasn't in your life plan to be this
No.
ultra adventure guy, but that leads to a whole other thing. You go all in on that for a while. And then so what happens next? You have this reflection of, okay, maybe I've gone as far as I need to go in this. You're going to take a step back. What was your next plan? What was your next pivot?
Well, funny you should ask that. So Well, I was climbing Denali in preparation for an Everest expedition. That had been the plan. Um, and as part of my preparation for that, I was back home. And obviously, doing something like Everest is quite expensive. So I'm like, oh, I might get some sponsors. Wonder if I can get a sponsor. So I went to a local gym here where I live and said, hey, would you like to sponsor me? And they said, we'd love to, but we're a small business. Like, we don't have money, but we'll give you a trainer. We'll give you someone to train you. Oh, fantastic. Okay. So this lady was a PT. She was magnificent. She was training me for a while. She said, look, I don't think for what your current endeavors and what you want to do, I don't think a traditional gym is for you. Have you looked into something like CrossFit? I went, oh, no, okay, I'll look into it. So I looked into it, found a local gym, joined it, was chatting to the owner who was really good at marketing, but probably not that great at some of the other stuff. And I said, now I've got a background in business. Have you ever thought about getting a partner? And he said, yeah, sure. And I ended up buying half the gym. And then that was not part of the plan. And then a little while later, he said, look, he wanted to move back to his hometown with his wife and open up a gym there. He said, do you want to buy me out? Oh, yeah, okay. So I bought him out. And then I realized that I was a nerd and I owned a gym. This was never part of the life plan. And then I went, okay, well, I've now got to fit this place out. I need to buy equipment, but I'm still like, I'm cheap. I don't want to spend a fortune doing this. How do I do that? Like, how do the big guys do it? Well, they import their own stuff. Can I do that? I don't know. How do I find out? Well, we try. So I made a few phone calls and then ended up traveling to Shanghai, sourcing warehouses and importing my own equipment. And then you get a few friends who go, hey, can you get some for us? Yeah, sure. And then you get some more people go, I heard you're getting some gym equipment in. Can you get some for us? So now I'm bringing in shipping containers and I can't keep that at home. So you end up buying a warehouse and then you buy a forklift. And now you might as well set up a website because you've got all this gym equipment you need to sell. So in the space of literally a couple of years, I went from, I'm going to do this expedition to, I've never went on the expedition. I now own a gym and a business importing and retailing gym equipment, which was never part of the plan. And now I'm a qualified gym instructor. I became certified with the Australian Weightlifting Federation. I did all these things out of the interest of doing this stuff. And then you're like, oh, heck, what am I going to do now? I found myself in this career. And I did that for about 7 years. I owned this gym. I ended up selling it to the lady who was the original trainer that kicked off the whole train of thought back at the original gym when I was looking for sponsorship. So I never ended up climbing Everest, which I'm completely fine with. Ended up owning a gym for like 7 years and owning an import retail business. And in amongst all of that, I'm sitting back going, well, I'm not climbing mountains anymore, but I have a really weird skill set that I have really great endurance for dragging heavy things or carrying heavy packs in very, very cold environments. Is there anywhere that I could use that skill? And I came across a race in the Canadian Arctic called the 6633, which was at the time, it was a 583-kilometer ultramarathon inside the Arctic, which was completely self-sufficient. You had to drag a sled with all your own gear and be able to survive alone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for up to 8 days inside the Arctic. And I went, I'm uniquely qualified for this. Sign me up. And that's how I ended up getting into long distance kind of super ultra Arctic ultras. It was just, oh, I've got these skills. Wonder where I can use that. Oh, I can do that.
Wow.
Oh, let's see what happens. And it went terribly. It was a complete disaster. It was an absolute disaster. But it was something that changed my life because the direction then changed because I ended up getting quite deep into that realm and ended up having quite a significant career in that area. I just followed my nose. The opportunity door was there. Hey, do you want a partner? Hey, how do I do this? Can I do this? I don't know. Let's find out. And you end up doing some incredible things, not because it was part of your life plan or your goal board or your vision board. We just went with it. What can we do? Let's find out.
Wow. Yeah. So
that was a long answer to your question, but
no, but I love it. It just reinforces that you're following your curiosity and your passion, and you're recognizing these opportunities and you're going with them. You just happen to come across CrossFit and a trainer as you're looking for a sponsor for your expedition. Next thing you know, you end up owning a gym and an equipment distribution company, all because you just went looking for a sponsor one day. It's just incredible that everybody can have these same opportunities like we've discussed, and they do. It's a matter of, do you recognize them and are you bold enough to capitalize them? And in your case, 5-6 times we've seen it over and over and over again. You get these opportunities presented to you and you run with them. And like you say, not everyone is successful. Not everything is a, hey, look at that, another win, but it's an
Mm,
experience. It's a
mm.
skill set you're obtaining, and you're learning and growing throughout it. So
Yeah, and I should qualify for listeners as well. Not all of these, like, oh, you went into business and then you got out of business. These aren't like, tech bro $1 million exits or anything of the sort. Like,
right.
pharmacy was very good to me. I made as much money in pharmacy as I did in property development, because I bought the freeholds of where I had my businesses and kept the freeholds after I sold the businesses. So that tended to be a better decision than necessarily running the businesses. The gym and the equipment import and retail business, I think I got out of those with as much as I put in them. So it's not like I'm sitting here just knocking it out of the park every single time. Some of them were fantastic. Some of them were break even. Some of them were total disasters, but they're
Right.
all part of the narrative that opened up the next door and opened up the
Yep.
next door, and away you
Right.
went. So,
Right.
and the same with mountaineering expeditions and ultra races. I've had as many DNFs and non-summits as I have successful ones. But that's all part of the building of that resume of knowledge and experience. You have to go out and do the things to find out whether you had the skills, whether you had the capacity, whether it was your time to have this happen or not. Like, you have to have the test to find out what the answer is. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
just don't know.
Yeah. And like you mentioned earlier in the episode, it's not about, hey, I have the best job, I make the most money, and I win at the
No.
end. In your case, you've done fine, but it wasn't
Mm.
about being a millionaire. It's about gaining experiences, following your passion, and you've done it over and over and over again, rinse and repeat. So I want to touch on that now, because you no
Mm.
longer own the gym and the equipment rental or distribution. Now you spend a lot of your time speaking, right, to organizations, to schools, about how to build the skills of discipline, curiosity, action, and adventure. What are some pieces of advice that you share with them that you can pass on to the audience listening today?
Well, some of it's something we've already talked about. I really present this concept of you having your story, and that your story has multiple chapters. And any good story will not, you think of great movies or great books you've had. They're not, Dennis woke up, Dennis had a great day, Dennis went to bed. Like, worst story ever. What we want is the highs and the lows and the relationships and the turns and the surprises and all those things. That's what makes a great story. And everyone wants to live a great story. So you then have to reflect on, how do I build a great story? Well, it's going to be made up of chapters, and those chapters are going to have characters, and they're going to have themes, and things are going to happen. There's going to be plot development. There's going to be twists and turns. And that's the kind of life that brings, I think, a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment from finding those things. And fulfillment doesn't come from an easy life. Fulfillment comes from doing difficult things and having those challenges, and some of them being setbacks and some of them being advances in the narrative. But that's part of fulfillment. When we talk to corporate people, often say, often businesses are looking for, how can I make life easier for Dennis? When in reality, maybe Dennis doesn't want it to be easier. Dennis just wishes he was stronger. He just wishes he was better at it and more capable, because that would translate to an entirely different mindset for him. So rather than trying to make it easy, let's just make him more capable. Let's make him stronger. And building that, I find, is a much stronger mindset and base for people to go out and do all the things that they might want to do, or they may not have realized they wanted to do, but just wanted the opportunity to see if they could, and leads from there. So it really is, again, that building your story and realizing that it's not one thing. It's not the words on your business card. It's not the career that you have. It's a myriad of all those things. And we need to explore all those things, so that rather than doing what I thought I'd do in pharmacy, going, oh, you've got to work really, really hard for 40 years, stack up enough cash, and then at the end, you'll do all the things you want to do. You've missed 6 decades of the story. You've missed all these chapters, and these little stepping stones along the way were actually meant to be milestones. They're meant to be big chapters in your life. So you need to be active and proactive in all those things right now, in every aspect, so that when you get to 60, you don't care whether you're retired or not, or whether you've got enough money to suddenly go do all the things, because you've been doing them all along. and you've got this big resume of skills and experience that you can use to keep compounding and keep doing things all the way through.
I love that. Fulfillment comes from doing difficult things. That's so true. It's so profound. No, people think they want an easy life, but an easy life is a boring life. And yeah, you actually are more fulfilled when you can accomplish difficult things. I love that.
The best example I
What?
got from that as a story for that, a quick story, was from a mate
Sure.
of mine who's a plumber. And he just said, look, we were chatting one day, he was out here fixing a pump here, and he's like, took his girls out on the weekend. He's got 2 young daughters. So we're school dads. We see each other at school. And he said, I took the girls out for a hike on the weekend. Total disaster, bucketed rain, complained the whole time, the standard parenting fare. And he said he got home and he said to his 2 young girls, he said, you'll never remember the best day you had sitting on the couch watching Netflix. But you'll always remember the day Dad dragged you up that mountain and it poured rain and you got stuck in the mud and you lost your shoe and it was horrible and freezing. And we came home and we made hot chocolates and what have you. And it's so true. You never remember the day where you sat on the couch and did nothing. You never remember the times when it was easy. Like when we talk about stories, what do you talk about? The ones that were ridiculous, the ones that were really hard and it didn't work, but I learned this or met that person or had that opportunity, or it did, it was really hard, but I did it. I managed and I survived and I summoned it or built this or did whatever. They're the stories that people talk about. And that's when it was hard. So go out and do some hard things, because that is when you write the best chapters for your story.
Love that. Yeah, and such a great example from your friend. This is
Really
a perfect
basic.
segue.
Okay,
Perfect
good.
segue because I want to end this off with a fun quote. I asked you ahead of the podcast, provide me with your favorite quote and why it resonates with you. And you kind of responded and said, "Oh, it's a hard one. It depends on, what's going on in different scenarios in my life." But you did provide me with one. It was from Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who's the author of The Black Swan. That's a book that has been discussed several times on this podcast as well. But I'm going to read your quote, and then I want you to explain why this resonates with you so much. The quote is, "Wind will extinguish a candle, but energize a fire. You want to be the fire and wish for the wind." You want to dissect that for us?
Yeah, I love that quote. I close my keynotes with that quote. And it's because when I open my keynotes, I tell people a couple of things. And the first is that I'm not going to give them a 5-point plan on how to be successful or elite, because there is no 5-point plan. It doesn't work that way. And I'm not going to give them a hug and tell them that it's going to be okay, because it's probably not, because the real world is the real world. But we're all professionals and we operate in the real world. So we'll behave in that manner. And it means when you get to the end, we talk about the fact that the wind in that quote is hard times. Difficult things will come up in your life. I don't care who you are. Hard times are coming. Difficult choices, difficult times. So they're coming whether you like it or not. So what really matters is, how will you meet those things? Do you want to get snuffed out? It's all too hard and I can't do it. Or do you want to go, I've been waiting for this opportunity. I've been waiting for this challenge so I can rise to it. And that's a choice that you have to make. And that's why I love that quote, because every time you get stuck in that moment of going, this is hard and it's horrible and it's not fair or whatever it is, well, this is your opportunity. How do you want to tackle this? Do you want to get blown out, or do you want to go, this is my time to shine? We're going to take it. It doesn't always end the way you want it, but we're going to run with it as hard and as best that we can. And even if it's a disaster, it'll still be a great story. So you can't lose either way.
Yeah, it's a win-win. I love that.
Yeah.
Be the fire, wish for the wind. Paul, you've got an incredible story. You've dropped all kinds of great advice, lots of wisdom from what you've been through, ups, downs, lots of happy accidents along the way. Where is the best place for people to connect with you?
Probably easiest is just paulwatkins.com.au. That's my website. You'll find me there and you'll find all the links. I'm often on LinkedIn. Often you and I are LinkedIn denizens. Will be there all the time. So you can often find me there. But that's the easiest place to find me. And you can then find me in all the socials and so forth from there.
Awesome. We'll drop all those links in the show notes. Paul, thank you so much for your time and for being a guest here on the podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do. But make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends.